Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us in the European Commission's virtual press room, and thank you also for watching us live on Europe by satellite today, Wednesday, 24th of February. The College of Commissioners held its weekly meeting, and it is my great pleasure to introduce Executive Vice President Frans Timmermans to provide you the readout of this college meeting.
Hello, everyone. I hope you're all safe. I want to welcome you to our college readout meeting that has just ended. We adopted our new EU strategy on adaptation to climate change. I will say something about this in a moment. We also discussed the launching of the first phase consultation with European social partners to improve the conditions of platform workers. And my colleagues Margrethe Vestager and Nicola Schmid will be with you later to present this to you. We also adopted a new regulation proposal on roaming, one of the big EU successes. As the current regulation expires next year, our proposal will allow travellers in the EU to continue calling, texting and using data without additional charges, and it will allow me as a parent not to have to say to my kids when we cross the border, shut your phone. Anyway, back to the issue of the climate adaptation strategy. It really is a pleasure for me to present it to you today. You know that for many, many years, we sort of avoided talking too much about adaptation because it felt like sort of admitting defeat in the wake of the climate crisis. But now we understand, we fully understand, that if we want to be a climate-neutral continent by 2050, if we want to be successful in tackling this incredible challenge, including the challenge of the biodiversity loss, we need to have an adaptation strategy, and that is why we have presented it today. We have to avoid the worst and prepare for the unavoidable. Even if we could eliminate all greenhouse gas emissions tomorrow, we would still face the effects of our past emissions for decades to come. The climate crisis already affects every single place in Europe. I speak to you 3 days after the hottest 21st of February on record in Brussels and other parts of Western Europe, and that came after a week after we had frosty temperatures. And I had my personal experience walking in the woods not far from Brussels a week before with my dogs. We were plowing through the snow, solid frozen soil. We could see, fortunately, some wild boar trying to dig up some roots. And a week later, almost 20 degrees, a week later, bugs coming out everywhere. We saw some butterflies. My dogs finally got to roll around in the mud again. But this is not easy on nature. It is really, really tough. And we need to make sure that we adapt, we strengthen also our nature so that it can be a good basis for carbon sink. Nature-based solutions are always the best solutions. So all of this will also affect our health. In 2019, the summer heat wave cost 2,500 people, Europeans, their lives. From our current pandemic reality, this number seems small, but that year it was the deadliest event worldwide. The Atlantic coast is eroding, outermost regions ravaged by hurricanes. There are forest fires in the Arctic Circle, crippling droughts in large parts of Central and Southern Europe. The more the climate crisis progresses, the bigger the battle for water will become. If we don't act, our children and grandchildren may face a world where Mad Max Fury Road is not just a movie scenario in 2050. We must ensure fresh and clean water stays available, reduce water use and protect water sources. This is just one of the threads of the new climate adaptation strategy. You can quote the example of Spain, where they have the phenomenon of the gota fria, which used to happen once every 50 years, and now happens almost every year. And an incredible amount of water falls down in an incredible short period of time. washing away roads, washing away topsoils, and disappearing immediately into the Mediterranean. And just weeks later, the drought is back. And if you could retain that water, if you could channel the water so it doesn't do much harm, it doesn't cause the misery to people there now, you would be able to avoid catastrophe and at the same time address the issue of droughts. Just one example. The strategy will have to help make the European Union not only climate neutral but also climate resilient by 2050. If we make our adaptation smarter, swifter and more systemic, we will be able to, and especially also add the international component, we will be able to learn from our partners, to learn from each other, and to make sure we adapt more quickly. Let me briefly touch on each of the dimensions of this. First, to make adaptation smarter, we need more data collection and data sharing. With more precise modeling on future hazards, farmers can better plan the crops they plant. Families buying a home will know what climate risks they may face. Businesses will know how to make new production facilities fit for a hotter planet. And cities will know how to protect their residents from weather extremes. We will also start monitoring the health effects of the climate crisis with a new climate health observatory. It will look at the direct impact of hot and cold extremes and what it means for the spread of new diseases. Next, to make adaptation more systemic, we will target more support at the local level, tailored advice for especially the most vulnerable communities so that they can find the expertise to plan and the resources to take action. We will promote nature-based solutions as much as possible. Think of protecting and restoring wetlands, or developing urban green spaces, or restoring peatlands. They help at adaptation, at the same time protect the biodiversity, give us cleaner air, and give us cooler cities. We also need to consider the impact of climate change on fiscal policies. Already extreme weather alone causes an average 12 billion euros a year in losses. If we fail to prevent a 3-degree rise in temperature, this could go up to 170 billion a year. Slower developing threats like sea level rise pose a big risk to the 40% of European GDP that is generated in coastal areas, and I think the 40% of Europeans living in coastal areas. Under today's strategy, the Commission will start a dialogue with Member States on the impact of disasters on public finance. This will be the starting point of designing more climate-proof fiscal frameworks. Thirdly, to speed up adaptation, we need to bridge the gap between planning and implementation. We will work with the European Investment Bank to boost adaptation financing. We will also intensify our collaboration with the insurance sector. The climate protection gap across Europe is still high, and too often the financial burden of natural disasters falls on uninsured families and businesses or public finances. Now, I note, for instance, that yesterday, in the country I know best, an agreement was reached between the insurance sector and the Royal Institute for Public Health and Environment, so that the Royal Institute could support the insurance sector, with up-to-date information and the best possible scientific knowledge, so that insurers know better how to plan and can provide better products at a fairer price to their clients. Finally, we need to do more at the international level. Climate impacts outside our borders will increasingly affect Europe as well. There's a lot for us to learn, especially from countries like Bangladesh and small island developing states. Think about what's happening in the Pacific. Adaptation has been an existential task for them for some time already, and existential in the most literal meaning of the word. Commitments on climate finance will play an important role for a successful COP in Glasgow in November. The EU has consistently lived up to our responsibilities, and we will intensify our work to bring other partners along too. This is one of the first things I say when I speak to my colleagues from other parts of the world, whether it's Alok Sharma, who chairs the COP, or John Kerry, or our Chinese counterparts. We need to put the money on the table for the emerging part of our planet to be able to take part in facing the climate crisis. So if we step up work on adaptation today, we can make the EU and the planet much better prepared for the unavoidable changes we will face tomorrow. And we need to do it immediately. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Executive Vice President. I will now open the floor to your questions. Like always, please keep your questions at this stage linked to the subject of this press conference, the strategy on adaptation to climate change, before addressing other points on the college's agenda. I also remind you, as the Executive Vice President said, that we will address the second point that you may be interested in on platform workers in a separate press conference just after this one. So please indicate by raising your hand if you have a question for the Executive Vice President on this subject. Indeed, I see that Anna has her hand raised. Anna, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yes, we can. All right. Good morning. I'm Anna Hubert from Context. J'ai une question peut-être en français pour le commissaire. Je voulais savoir si à partir d'aujourd'hui, donc avec cette stratégie, on pouvait dire que seulement les infrastructures climate proof, donc à la hauteur de l'action climatique, seront financées par l'Union européenne. Est-ce qu'on peut comprendre la stratégie comme un engagement en ce sens-là? Et peut-être une deuxième question sur... on a pu lire dans la stratégie que par rapport à 2013, plus de secteurs étaient couverts. Est-ce que le commissaire pourrait développer, le vice-président pourrait développer sur ce sujet-là exactement quels seraient les nouveaux secteurs qui sont désormais couverts par la stratégie d'adaptation de l'Union européenne? Merci beaucoup.
Sur votre première question, ce que j'ai dit aux collègues ce matin pendant notre collège, c'est que chacun d'entre nous sera affecté par le besoin d'adaptation dans les politiques qu'on développe. Donc, je leur ai demandé, avec tout ce que vous faites, pensez aussi à l'adaptation, avec les fonds structurels, avec le RRF qui est en développement maintenant, avec tous les projets qu'on doit financer, avec tous les structures qu'on doit développer. Avez en tête il faut avoir en tête qu'il faut vraiment concentrer aussi sur l'aspect d'adaptation. Un investissement fait sans avoir pris en compte les risques du temps qu'il fait, etc., serait un investissement perdu. Donc je veux plutôt formuler ça de manière positive, pas avec des sanctions, mais simplement d'avoir la présence d'esprit, d'incorporer ces considérations dans le développement de projet, et en plus, on aura la possibilité d'utiliser les connaissances venant de tous les États membres et aussi du monde extérieur sur ce qui fonctionne le mieux. Sur votre deuxième question, je crois que ce qui est nouveau, complètement nouveau, c'est qu'on se concentre maintenant surtout sur l'aspect international. On n'avait pas fait ça en 2013 et on sait, pour des raisons très claires, que si on n'a pas à l'esprit les enjeux, par exemple, dans le milieu pacifique ou par exemple en Afrique, si on n'est pas en mesure d'aider ces États de s'adapter au changement climatique déjà en cours, on n'aura jamais un accord international sur la neutralité climatique. Je vous rappelle que l'Europe est responsable pour 8 à 9% des émissions, donc c'est très bien qu'on aura une Europe neutre du point de vue climatique en 2050, mais si le reste du monde ne suit pas, ça n'aura pas l'effet voulu sur le climat. Donc il faut vraiment insister sur l'aspect international. Deuxièmement, je crois qu'on regarde maintenant aussi de plus près les systèmes fiscaux et le secteur des assurances. Et là, je crois que c'est une innovation. Mes collègues Dombrovskis et McGuinness vont se concentrer sur cette question dans les mois qui viennent. Et je crois que là aussi, renouveler les systèmes pour pouvoir agir plus vite et agir avec plus de connaissances, ça peut aider ceux qui décident sur les systèmes fiscaux, mais surtout le monde financier qui doit se concentrer, qui doit investir, qui doit être sûr aussi, ceux qui s'occupent d'assurance, qu'ils ont des investissements qui ne seront pas perdus à cause de manque d'adaptation. Voilà.
Merci beaucoup. Je donnerai maintenant la parole à Angelo. Angelo, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I don't know if you can see me, but in any case, thank you for giving me the floor. May I ask a question in Italian?
Rotation today towards German, French, Italian, Dutch, and Spanish. And we have a multilingual executive vice president on stage who can address himself all of those. Go ahead.
Thanks. Vicepresidente, è una domanda che si collega a quello che ha appena detto sulla cooperazione internazionale. Oggi il Comitato delle Regioni ha approvato una relazione, un parere, in cui si fa riferimento alla necessità per l'area del Mediterraneo, che come si scrive anche nella vostra comunicazione, sarà una di quelle colpite più duramente probabilmente dai cambiamenti climatici, per l'area del Mediterraneo di cercare di sperimentare nuove forme di cooperazione anche con l'Unione per il Mediterraneo, per esempio con un fondo di crisi che metta insieme tutti i paesi dell'area, del bacino. La strategia dell'Unione Europea è come dire, l'Unione Europea secondo lei è pronta a questo tipo di iniziative? Grazie.
Io non ho ancora visto quello che hanno deciso al comitato, ma mi sembra logico che utilizziamo tutte le possibilità che abbiamo per parlare con i nostri amici nell'ambito mediterraneo, perché ho visto chiaramente che c'è un problema gigantesco, perché ci sarà anche una pressione migratoria enorme se non abbiamo maniera di evitare, per esempio, dei conflitti perché non c'è acqua o perché c'è troppa acqua. Dunque mi sembra logico e necessario che ci sia un dibattito con i paesi nel Mediterraneo. Ripeto, non ho ancora visto l'opinione del Comitato, ma mi sembra logico e credo che la Commissione sarà disposta a fare tutto quello che è necessario per farlo, per creare un successo.
Grazie. I would now want to give the floor to Kira. Kira Taylor, are you there?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, see you. Go ahead.
So Kira Taylor from Euractiv. So you talked a lot about sort of the modelling side, but how is the strategy going to ensure job security in vulnerable industries like construction and agriculture? And then a second question on what are the practicalities of helping communities who are already suffering from climate change?
Well, it is clear that if you look at areas and parts of the economy most affected, of course, you're talking about how we build and how we put in roads and how we create physical infrastructure. And it is clear that we need to adapt those activities to the challenges posed by climate change. But it's also a huge opportunity if we can use the renovation wave that is part of our plans in the coming years, if we can reorient the investment for physical infrastructure towards creating a more resilient physical infrastructure in our member states. I think you create jobs and at the same time you prepare that infrastructure for the future. And now, having answered your first question, I've completely forgotten your second question, so apologies. Could you repeat your second question?
Yeah, of course. So what is the practical help for communities which are already suffering?
Yeah, I remember again. Well, what we're going to do is to create the possibility to share all the information that is available out there, the successes created at local level or regional level, and we will be prepared to share that with the regions, with localities that need to take the necessary measures. And I believe that's why I'm also intrigued by the Committee of the Regions looking at the issue. I believe this is something that will be highly necessary because many of the measures we need to take fall on the responsibility of local authorities. So we need to put them in a position to be able to make the right choices, the right investments, to have the right technical information, perhaps also to have the right financial support. And I'm really looking forward to working closely with regional and local authorities on this.
Thank you. Now I will want to give the floor to Tommaso. Tommaso, are you there?
Yes, good morning. Thank you for taking my question. Tommaso Gallavotti, again, Kronos, Italy. Good morning, Vice President. It's just a question on the social consequences of the Green Deal, if I may, because the CEO of Renault, Luca De Meo, explained that, for example, the powertrain of an electric car is much more expensive than the powertrain of a traditional car. And that would imply that electric cars will be more expensive also for the final consumer, in the order of several thousands euros. Is the Commission thinking about this issue, which might be important at social level? Thank you.
Well, absolutely, absolutely. What you describe is a situation today. Indeed, electric vehicles are more expensive than traditional combustion engine vehicles. But this is not going to stay like that. If we can help the automotive industry, and that's one of the reasons why we want to help them, if we can help them make this transition to EVs quicker, if we can increase the volumes of production, if we can create the right infrastructure, charging infrastructure, and the underlying renewable energy generation, if we can do that, if we can invest in that, then I'm quite sure that within the foreseeable future, and some analyses already point to that, EVs will be cheaper than the traditional combustion engine vehicles. So I fully understand that today EVs, electric vehicles, are not accessible to many people in Europe yet, but we see that the uptake of EVs is going much faster than was anticipated. I think the bottleneck will be, do we have enough charging capacity and charging places in the future? Not so much selling of EVs. So the uptake is increasing. European citizens are interested in it. Today it is still, for many, too expensive, but I think within 3, 4, 5 years, this situation may change. You also see that the automotive industry is making fast strides in that direction. So I become more optimistic about that. But having said this, you took the cars as an example, but we have so many areas where we have to be extremely careful that this transformation does not create a wider chasm between people who have a lot of income and people who have very little income. This transition will only happen if people feel it and see it to be just. If it's not a just transition, the transition just will not happen. That's absolutely clear. And so we need to adapt our fiscal policies, our social policies. We need to make sure we skill people so that they can take up the new jobs that will be coming with the new economy. The more we assure that the principle of the European Union, which is a social market economy, is also reflected in the way we develop our new economy, the more support we will get from our population. But risks are there. Energy poverty is another risk we need to address. And with initiatives such as the renovation wave, which give huge support to improving the quality of housing, we can address the issue and hopefully convince a large majority of Europeans that we're making sure that nobody is left behind.
Thank you. Maintenant, je donnerai la parole à Odile. Odile, est-ce que tu es là?
En français, s'il vous plaît, pour Radio Nord-Bretagne. Monsieur le Président, la plupart des citoyens sont favorables au changement climatique, mais concrètement sur le terrain, ils sont souvent opposés à l'utilisation, par exemple, des éoliennes ou quelquefois des panneaux solaires aussi. Et en ce qui concerne les rénovations, surtout maintenant dans cette période de difficultés économiques, ils ne voient pas comment ils vont avoir suffisamment de fonds pour changer leur chaudière, etc. Parce que tout le monde n'a pas forcément droit aux primes. Et donc, ça pose beaucoup de problèmes. Mais il semble que en France, en Bretagne en particulier aussi, le problème des éoliennes soulève beaucoup d'opposition pour les éoliennes offshore qui sont aussi proches des bassins de coquilles Saint-Jacques pour les pêcheurs, etc. Il y a beaucoup de manifestations. En Provence, la montagne Sainte-Victoire, qui est un lieu emblématique de Cézanne, et aussi défiguré par des projets d'éoliennes, etc. Comment est-ce que vous voyez ça pour continuer à avoir l'adhésion de la population pour la stratégie européenne de changement climatique, changement énergétique, etc. Merci.
Ouais. Premièrement, il y a encore un soutien très très considérable d'une majorité des Européens pour des politiques pour faire face à la crise climatique. Deuxièmement, il faut se demander ce qui se passe si on ne fait rien du tout. Si les températures iront en hausse vers les 3 degrés, est-ce qu'il y aura encore une agriculture en France? Est-ce qu'il y aura encore la possibilité de faire face à des tempêtes, des incendies, etc., etc. Qu'est-ce qui se passe sur les côtes si la côte atlantique est mise en danger? Donc il faut quand même, oui, c'est difficile et pas tout ce qu'on fait est reçu avec applaudissements, mais il faut quand même comparer ce qu'on doit faire avec le résultat de ne faire rien du tout. Et là, je crois qu'on a encore un boulot à faire du point de vue politique, mais en plus, je dirais, il y a quand même des exemples des éoliennes sur la mer qui fonctionnent très bien. Donc, peut-être les Bretons pourraient se mettre en contact avec des régions en Europe où ça fonctionne bien et où on investit énormément. Les Danois le font, les Néerlandais le font. Maintenant, dans la mer Baltique, les Polonais sont en train de le faire. Et tous ces pays ont aussi des enjeux de pêche et des enjeux touristiques qu'ils cherchent à mettre en équilibre avec la nécessité de générer plus d'énergie soutenable. Et je crois qu'on peut trouver en dialogue avec tous les intéressés des solutions qui font face aux enjeux et qui respectent les intérêts, par exemple, des pêcheurs. Ce n'est pas toujours facile, rien de tout ça est facile, mais on n'a pas le choix, il faut le faire. Il faut le faire parce que sinon, on ne sera jamais en mesure d'arrêter l'augmentation de la température. Et moi, je ne veux pas faire face à mes enfants et mes petits-enfants en leur disant « tant pis, une éolienne, ça n'a pas plu, on n'a rien fait ».
Merci beaucoup. I will now invite Kostis to ask his question. Kostis, are you there? Kostis, you need to choose your mic source. Can you select your mic source, Kostis? Because otherwise we cannot hear you. So do we have Kostis on the line? No, we don't. So waiting for Kostis to fix his mic problem, I will now invite the other colleagues who are online, if they have any other questions for the Executive Vice President today.
Not the case.
Yes, Kostis seems to be back, so I hope it works. Kostis, can you talk now? Can you try? So it still doesn't work with Kostis, so then we will take care of your question by bilateral means. Don't hesitate to get in touch with us, and we will arrange that your question will be answered. And with that, I thank you very much, and please stay tuned, because very shortly you will have the press conference on platform workers by Executive Vice President Vestager and Commissioner Schmidt. Thank you very much.